What if one man nearly bankrupted a colonial empire without modern weapons entirely? What if anger became more powerful than cannons, ships, and military superiority? History sometimes changes because of insults rather than battles or political ambitions. In the early 19th century, Dutch power dominated much of Java firmly. Colonial authorities believed their control was secure and increasingly unchallengeable across regions. Yet beneath the surface, frustration and resentment continued growing quietly among communities. One day, construction plans crossed land considered sacred by Prince Diponegoro deeply. Survey stakes appeared near ancestral graves carrying profound spiritual significance locally. Colonial officials viewed it as administration. Diponegoro viewed it differently entirely. To him, the act represented disrespect toward heritage, faith, and dignity. Some moments appear small while secretly carrying enormous historical consequences within them. This was one of those moments that changed everything afterward dramatically. Diponegoro's anger did not explode immediately into open rebellion or violence. Instead, it matured slowly through observation, reflection, and growing dissatisfaction constantly. He saw suffering, inequality, and expanding colonial influence throughout Java repeatedly. Villagers, religious leaders, and ordinary people increasingly shared similar frustrations everywhere. Their concerns extended beyond politics into identity, justice, and cultural survival. The conditions for a major uprising were quietly forming beneath daily life. Like distant thunder before a storm, warning signs appeared across the island. Few realized how devastating the coming conflict would become for everyone involved. The Dutch expected resistance, but not a war lasting many exhausting years. Diponegoro was about to transform from prince into symbol of resistance itself, and once that transformation began, stopping it would prove extraordinarily difficult. Java stood on the edge of one of its greatest wars ever. Prince Diponegoro could have lived comfortably within aristocratic privilege and luxury forever. Instead, he increasingly distanced himself from court politics and material comforts. His attention focused on ordinary people struggling beneath colonial pressures daily. Taxes burdened communities already facing difficult economic realities across many regions. Local grievances accumulated year after year without meaningful solutions emerging. Frustration grew among farmers, religious figures, and village leaders alike. Diponegoro listened carefully to concerns often ignored by colonial authorities completely. Through these conversations, he gained support extending far beyond noble circles. People recognized someone willing to challenge conditions they considered unjust increasingly. Word spread rapidly from village to village across central Java. The movement attracted individuals from diverse backgrounds united by common frustrations. Farmers, clerics, former soldiers, and local leaders joined together gradually. What began as dissatisfaction evolved into organized resistance against colonial authority. Groups gathered in forests and rural strongholds beyond immediate Dutch control. Their resources were limited, but determination remained remarkably strong throughout. Many believed they were defending dignity, faith, and ancestral traditions simultaneously. Such convictions often inspire resilience far beyond material capabilities alone. Loyalty to the cause deepened as tensions continued escalating steadily. Dutch officials noticed troubling reports describing unrest spreading across multiple districts. Initially, many assumed the disturbances would remain isolated and manageable locally. They underestimated both Diponegoro's influence and public support dramatically. Soon, isolated incidents merged into a larger and more dangerous movement. The first sparks of rebellion appeared across Java with increasing frequency. A conflict that would reshape colonial history was finally beginning. When war finally erupted, it spread faster than Dutch authorities expected entirely. Resistance appeared across multiple regions, creating challenges difficult to contain simultaneously. The conflict quickly expanded beyond isolated uprisings into widespread warfare throughout Java. Diponegoro avoided conventional battles where Dutch advantages proved overwhelming and decisive. Instead, his followers relied upon mobility, surprise, and local knowledge extensively. Forests, hills, and villages became important elements of resistance strategy. Ambushes disrupted supply lines supporting Dutch military operations across contested territories. Small attacks created persistent pressure while avoiding unnecessary direct confrontations repeatedly. Colonial forces struggled against an enemy difficult to locate consistently. Rebels appeared unexpectedly, attacked quickly, and disappeared before reinforcements arrived. Traditional military methods proved less effective against such flexible tactics repeatedly. Frustration grew among commanders responsible for restoring order and stability quickly. Local communities often supported resistance through information, shelter, and supplies discreetly. This support network strengthened the movement far beyond battlefield engagements alone. Every village potentially offered assistance, making suppression increasingly difficult everywhere. Dutch officers spent countless hours analyzing maps and intelligence reports carefully. Yet predicting Diponegoro's next move remained frustratingly difficult despite extensive efforts. Geography itself seemed to favor resistance over conventional military control repeatedly. Successful raids boosted morale while demonstrating continued resistance capabilities publicly. The war became a contest of endurance rather than straightforward battlefield victories. Every month increased costs, casualties, and uncertainty for colonial authorities significantly. The conflict expanded into one of the most expensive wars Dutch encountered. What seemed manageable initially was becoming a growing colonial nightmare steadily. And the worst difficulties for the Dutch were still ahead. Months turned into years, and the war showed no signs ending soon. Dutch forces remained trapped within an exhausting cycle of pursuit continuously. Every advance seemed to create new challenges somewhere else immediately afterward. Supplying troops across contested territory required enormous resources and coordination constantly. Roads became dangerous as resistance fighters targeted vulnerable supply movements repeatedly. Maintaining control demanded far greater effort than colonial planners anticipated originally. Diponegoro understood something essential about fighting a stronger opponent effectively. Victory did not require defeating every enemy soldier directly in battle. Sometimes victory meant making occupation unbearably expensive and difficult instead. Reports accumulated describing casualties, setbacks, and continuing instability throughout affected regions. Administrators struggled balancing military requirements with financial realities increasingly. The conflict consumed money at a pace causing serious concern everywhere. Reinforcements arrived regularly, yet decisive success remained frustratingly elusive despite efforts. More troops required more supplies, transportation, and financial support continuously. The war gradually evolved into a major burden upon colonial resources. Night raids kept pressure on isolated positions while maintaining uncertainty constantly. Defenders rarely enjoyed lasting security even within fortified locations themselves. Fear and exhaustion became common experiences among soldiers and officers alike. Strategic maps revealed an uncomfortable reality growing clearer every passing month. The Dutch could win engagements without actually ending the war itself. Resistance adapted quickly whenever circumstances changed across the battlefield unexpectedly. Financial costs reached extraordinary levels for a conflict expected manageable initially. The war was draining money, manpower, and confidence simultaneously from authorities. Java had become one of the most expensive struggles in Dutch history. By now, Diponegoro had become far more than a prince alone anymore. He represented resistance, dignity, and determination for countless supporters throughout Java. His influence extended beyond military leadership into spiritual and cultural significance. Communities continued joining the movement despite ongoing risks and hardships everywhere. The conflict gained strength from shared beliefs rather than material advantages. Such commitment made the resistance difficult to defeat through force alone. Diponegoro worked closely with religious leaders and trusted commanders strategically. Their efforts maintained unity despite constant pressure from colonial operations continuously. Every success reinforced confidence that resistance could continue indefinitely perhaps. Meanwhile, Dutch commanders faced uncomfortable questions regarding the war's future increasingly. Conventional military superiority had not produced decisive results despite years passing. Resources continued disappearing into a conflict without clear resolution ahead. Large sections of Java remained unstable despite extensive military deployments everywhere. Maps displayed contested regions where authority shifted constantly between opposing forces. Control proved fragile whenever troops moved elsewhere to address emergencies. Isolated positions endured frequent attacks designed to exhaust defenders mentally and physically. Soldiers experienced uncertainty daily, rarely knowing where danger might emerge next. The psychological burden became nearly as significant as battlefield losses themselves. An empire possessing superior resources found itself struggling against persistent resistance. The contrast highlighted how determination can challenge even powerful institutions effectively. Still, neither side possessed a simple path toward complete victory yet. The war reached extraordinary intensity while solutions seemed increasingly distant everywhere. Both sides understood the conflict could not continue forever unchanged indefinitely. Soon, the Dutch would adopt a strategy that changed everything. After years of frustration, Dutch commanders abandoned hopes for quick military victories. Instead, they adopted a slower strategy emphasizing control rather than pursuit alone. This approach became known as the fort stelsel system throughout Java. Small forts appeared across contested regions, connected by roads and patrols. Each fort strengthened colonial presence while limiting resistance movement gradually. Unlike dramatic battles, this strategy advanced patiently and methodically over time. Military maps began revealing an uncomfortable pattern for Diponegoro's supporters increasingly. Areas once freely accessible became harder to reach without detection suddenly. The network steadily reduced operational flexibility enjoyed by resistance forces previously. Movement became riskier as patrols monitored roads and strategic routes closely. Safe regions gradually shrank under persistent pressure from expanding fortifications. The battlefield itself was changing in favor of colonial authorities steadily. Dutch forces no longer chased endlessly, they focused on restricting possibilities instead. This distinction proved crucial in shifting momentum after years of stalemate. Resistance groups found coordination increasingly difficult under growing constraints everywhere. Supplying fighters required greater effort as traditional routes became vulnerable repeatedly. Communication slowed while pressure mounted from multiple directions simultaneously across territories. Every decision carried higher risks than before, limiting strategic options considerably. Diponegoro recognized that circumstances were changing despite continued determination and resolve. The enemy had discovered a way to challenge guerrilla advantages effectively. For the first time, the resistance faced genuine strategic isolation gradually emerging. Yet the most dramatic turning point had not arrived quite yet. A meeting presented as peace would soon alter everything unexpectedly, and the war's greatest twist was only moments away. By 1830, years of warfare had exhausted both sides significantly and painfully. The conflict seemed trapped between continued resistance and uncertain resolution indefinitely. Then an opportunity appeared in the form of proposed negotiations unexpectedly. Dutch authorities invited Diponegoro to discuss possible paths toward peace formally. Such meetings traditionally carried expectations of respect and diplomatic conduct mutually. Despite risks, the invitation suggested a chance to end suffering, perhaps. The meeting took place in Magelang under tense and uncertain circumstances. Both sides arrived carrying years of conflict, sacrifice, and mistrust deeply. Yet negotiations still represented a possibility many desperately wanted explored. Diponegoro entered the discussions as a leader seeking honorable solutions carefully. Few moments in history carry such importance within seemingly ordinary settings. Decisions made there would shape the war's conclusion permanently afterward. Unknown to Diponegoro, Dutch plans extended beyond diplomacy and negotiation alone. The meeting concealed intentions that would soon transform everything dramatically. What appeared peaceful suddenly shifted into one of history's defining betrayals. Colonial authorities arrested Diponegoro during the negotiations, ending his freedom immediately. Supporters reacted with shock as the respected leader was taken away. Years of warfare concluded not on battlefields but within a meeting. The moment remains controversial because expectations of trust were fundamentally broken. Militarily, the Dutch achieved what years of campaigns had failed accomplishing. They captured the man who symbolized resistance throughout Java profoundly. Yet capturing a person differs greatly from capturing an idea completely. The war was ending, but Diponegoro's influence would not disappear. In many ways, his transformation into a lasting symbol had begun. Following his arrest, Diponegoro was removed from Java and placed in exile. The journey marked the end of his direct involvement in resistance activities. For colonial authorities, this represented a long-sought strategic breakthrough finally achieved. Yet exile could separate a leader from followers, not from history. Diponegoro carried dignity despite losing freedom and homeland simultaneously during exile. His physical absence would not erase years of influence across Java. Far away, he reflected upon a conflict that transformed countless lives permanently. The war left deep scars on communities throughout the island, everywhere. Villages suffered destruction while families endured hardship and painful losses repeatedly. Recovery would require years beyond the conflict's official conclusion afterward. Meanwhile, Dutch administrators examined the true cost of their victory carefully. The numbers revealed a reality impossible to celebrate without reservation fully. Years of warfare consumed extraordinary financial resources from colonial budgets extensively. Maintaining troops, supplies, transportation, and fortifications proved enormously expensive throughout. Casualties added further burdens beyond simple economic calculations and statistics. Reports filled with expenses highlighted the scale of the prolonged struggle. What seemed a military success carried consequences extending far beyond battlefields. The Dutch won, but only after paying an exceptionally high price. Financial strain reached levels that alarmed officials across colonial administration circles. The war became one of the costliest conflicts the Dutch experienced. Victory appeared far less glorious when measured against accumulated sacrifices required. An uncomfortable question emerged from the aftermath of years fighting relentlessly. Had the empire truly won everything it hoped to achieve completely? Or had the war changed both sides more deeply than expected? History contains a strange pattern repeated across different places and centuries frequently. Sometimes defeated leaders become more influential after losing than before unexpectedly. Diponegoro's story followed that remarkable pattern with extraordinary clarity afterward. Across villages, people continued sharing stories about his courage and sacrifice. Parents told children about resistance against overwhelming power and impossible odds. These stories preserved memory long after battles themselves had ended completely. Gradually, Diponegoro became more than a historical individual in public consciousness. He evolved into a symbol representing dignity, faith, and determination itself. Symbols often possess resilience greater than armies, prisons, or political systems. Colonial authorities had removed the man but not his influence entirely. The ideas associated with resistance continued circulating among communities widely. Memory proved harder to control than territory or military movements alone. Artists, storytellers, and community leaders helped preserve his legacy carefully. Each generation interpreted his story through contemporary hopes and challenges differently. Yet certain themes remained consistent: courage, sacrifice, and unwavering conviction always. Future generations found inspiration within the example Diponegoro left behind. His struggle became part of a broader narrative about identity and freedom. Long after the war ended, its emotional impact remained powerful nationally. This created a fascinating contrast between official victory and cultural memory. The Dutch controlled territory, but they could not fully control remembrance. Stories continued traveling farther than military orders ever could realistically. Diponegoro's reputation grew stronger precisely because people refused forgetting him. In a sense, exile transformed him into something larger than himself. And that transformation leads directly to the story's final twist. On paper, the Dutch achieved victory after years of exhausting conflict finally. Diponegoro was captured, exiled, and removed from the battlefield permanently. Colonial authority ultimately survived one of its greatest regional challenges successfully. Yet history cannot be measured only through military outcomes and statistics. The true legacy of conflicts often emerges long after battles conclude. And this is where the story takes its final unexpected turn. The Dutch captured Diponegoro's body, but not the meaning behind him. His name continued inspiring people long after imprisonment and exile began. Stories about courage survived more effectively than many political institutions themselves. Colonial victories gradually faded from public memory across later generations naturally. Meanwhile, Diponegoro's reputation continued growing stronger through historical remembrance steadily. The man defeated militarily became victorious within collective memory instead. This creates one of history's most fascinating and enduring ironies remarkably. Victory and defeat do not always belong to the same side. Sometimes battlefield success fails to secure lasting admiration or respect afterward. Future generations remembered sacrifice, determination, and resistance more than conquest. The war's emotional legacy extended far beyond its official ending date. Diponegoro became a symbol transcending the circumstances of his capture completely. Monuments, books, and national memory preserved his story across decades continuously. His influence reached people who never witnessed the war personally themselves. That is the extraordinary power of ideas rooted in conviction deeply. Empires may command armies, wealth, and territory for generations successfully, but enduring legacy belongs to those remembered long after power disappears. And that is why Prince Diponegoro remains unforgettable even today.